There is a silence that can only be found after walking alone under the relentless sun of your own desert, and when it is born, no other person's storm can tear it from within you. Today, we will dive into the journey of someone who has faced their own inner dryness and discovered that the true shelter is not outside, but in the center of one's own soul. We will talk about how this crossing forever changes the way you deal with the world, and how it connects with spirituality, personal development, and spiritual awakening. Perhaps you have already felt the hot wind of abandonment, the sand of loneliness scratching at the eyes of your soul, the thirst for meaning that always seemed far away. The desert we speak of here is not a spot on the map. It is an internal state, that place where everything you thought was safe collapses, and you find yourself before a horizon without guarantees, where there are no ready-made routes or predictable shortcuts. The masters of Sufism say that the desert is the arena where the ego starves and the soul learns to feed on presence. The Coptic desert monks, rarely remembered in modern conversations, said that isolation is not an escape, it is a forge. There, far from the noise, we discover that true silence is not the absence of sound, but the stillness that remains even when the world shouts. This is the first lesson of spiritual awakening. It is not about accumulating certainties, but about crossing the inner aridity until you find a spring that never dries. When that spring is discovered, it becomes the true home. And that home is portable. You carry it with you anywhere, without the outside noise having the power to drive you away. Zosimos of Panopolis, a rarely cited Egyptian alchemist, saw the desert as the alchemical vessel where decomposition prepares the material to be reborn purified. Similarly, when we cross our own desert, we realize that every loss, every solitude, is part of the process of distilling what we are. But there is a detail that few notice. The crossing is not linear. Sometimes, we believe we have found the oasis, only to discover it was a mirage. Other times, we think we are lost, when in fact we are simply being guided to a path the old map didn't show. True personal development is not measured by quick victories, but by the ability to walk consistently even when the landscape offers no promises. And in the end, what matters is not how quickly we cross, but how deeply we have been transformed along the way. The desert is, in many traditions, the symbol of the most radical transformation. Among the Tuareg people, a traveler who returns from a long crossing is considered a different person, not only because of where they have been, but because of what they have left behind. In the Hermetic teachings of Zosimos, the desert is not pure hostility. It is the womb of metamorphosis. He spoke of the soul's slow cooking, as if solitude itself were the alchemical fire that purifies the impurities. It is here that we learn to distinguish between real necessity and fleeting desire, essential truth and inherited opinion. This understanding is at the heart of personal development. It is when we stop living to prove something to others and start living to honor our own truth. In the crossing, there is no audience to applaud us. There is no external voice to tell us whether we are right or wrong. There is only the wind and our own breathing. But, curiously, it is in this absence of guarantees that unshakable trust is born. Trust that does not depend on circumstances, but on the quiet certainty that we already carry within us what we were seeking outside. And what if the pain you carry is, in fact, the sand that is polishing the jewel of your consciousness? Just as the intense heat of the day gives way to the cutting cold of the night in the desert, so too does the aridity of the crossing give way to something new. A silence that does not weigh, but nourishes. Among the Yomabushi, monks from the mountains of Japan, there is the practice of getting lost in nature to find the spirit again. In the silence of forests and peaks, they experience the dissolution of social identity and the reconnection with essence. The inner desert works in much the same way. At first, the silence can seem like a frightening void, but little by little, it reveals itself as a fertile emptiness, a space where the mind, tired of negotiating with fear, begins to listen to the soul. In that silence, we realize we are not just thoughts, but a presence that observes and sustains everything. This is the soil where spiritual awakening germinates. And we don't need to be physically isolated to find it. It can emerge in the stillness of early morning, on a solitary walk, or even in the pause between one breath and the next. Lesser-known masters, such as Ibn Atta al-Iskandari of the Sufi tradition, said that silence is the language of God. Everything else is an imperfect translation. When we touch that silence, we understand that we no longer need to chase peace. It is already here, beneath our feet. Fertile silence is also a teacher of humility. It reminds us that we do not control the rhythm of things. Just as a seed germinates in the dark before breaking through the soil, we too need a hidden time so the new self can blossom. And when silence inhabits us, it doesn't mean the world around will calm down. The storms will come. The difference is that we already know how to remain steady when they blow. Those who have crossed their own desert know that external storms are inevitable. Criticism, judgment, chaos, urgency, none of this disappears. The difference is that our reaction changes. The Taoist Gushing, rarely mentioned in the West, said that the one who masters the heart is like the mountain. The wind only dresses it, never moves it. This steadiness is not the result of coldness, but of presence. It is knowing that, no matter how strong the wind, there is a point within us that cannot be moved. In personal development, this emotional maturity translates into the ability not to confuse ourselves with someone else's turmoil. We can hold space for another's pain without losing our own center. In spiritual awakening, we realize that life is not about eliminating storms, but about learning to dance in the rain without dissolving. This stance is the fruit of the crossing. Only those who have faced their own scorching heat know how to remain whole in the midst of a gale. But for this steadiness not to turn into rigidity, it is necessary to nourish the inner spring we discovered in the desert, the spring that reminds us every day that shelter is within. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself in the center of a desert. The sun shines brightly, the wind lifts sand, but it does not harm you. It dances around you as if it knows it has no power over you. In your chest, there is a spring that pours out fresh water. This spring is your presence, the part of you that is untouched by fear or noise. Drink from this water. Feel it travel through every part of your being. Practices like this are not mere exercises of imagination. They are seeds planted in the unconscious that begin to bloom when we need them most. They strengthen the memory that true safety does not come from external control, but from intimacy with one's own essence. And it is precisely this intimacy that grants us the final freedom of the crossing, to walk through the world without fear of losing ourselves in storms that are not ours. After the crossing, something changes. It's not about becoming immune to pain or challenges, but about realizing that they no longer own your destiny. Those who have crossed their own desert carry an invisible compass. They know when to stop, when to go, when to wait for the storm to pass. This freedom is the fruit of spirituality that is lived, not theorized, of personal development built step by step, of a spiritual awakening that remains alive in the everyday. The world will continue to blow storms, but now you know, the shelter you seek is within you, and no one can tear it away. Maybe you are still in the middle of the crossing. Maybe you have already found your oasis. But one thing is certain. Those who have crossed their own desert have learned that the storms of others do not define the weather within themselves. And you? Have you started your crossing yet? If something inside you has calmed or awakened upon hearing these words, allow yourself to continue. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to walk with us along this fertile road of silence, discoveries, and reconnection. Leave your experience in the comments. Your sharing is also a seed of healing for other hearts. And if you want to stay in this vibration, watch the next video suggested on the card. Maybe it's exactly what you need to continue your journey. Peace and light.